Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on Chestermere Today's Coffee Break. I'm Mayor Colvin, and today I'm joined with Travis Fillier, and I'm also joined with Shamin Vincenzo. We're here to talk about some of the hot topics. One of our topics for today is going to be new Chestermere schools. Travis and Shamin are experts from planning who can speak to all of these issues and concerns that we're having today around schools. Travis, can you tell the residents what's your role within the city?
Yep. So hi, my name is Travis Fillier. I'm City Director of Community Growth and Infrastructure. I also am one of the CAOs here for the city as well.
Excellent. Shamin, what is your role in the city?
I am the Development and Special Projects Manager for the City of Chestermere, and I've been with the city for 12 years now.
Really, 12 years. And so both of you live in Chestermere currently.
That is correct.
Correct.
And you have how many children?
Two.
Two children, and you have
I have one
one
in
child.
high school.
Fantastic. Well, as everyone knows, I have three children, which have all gone to just Chestermere schools. So it's been quite an experience for us, all positive. Now, one of the things I was going to ask you, Travis. So, what is your background? You come to us, from I understand from the East Coast, which is exciting. That was Halifax, is that right?
That's correct. Yep. So I recently just moved back from Halifax. Originally from the East Coast. I'm from Newfoundland. My wife is from Ontario, and so we've lived in Alberta for probably, I'm going to say, since 2006. So ventured in Fort McMurray and Red Deer mainly. So we end up moving to Nova Scotia during COVID, right? Looking for some change and decided to move back that way, and then realized that we wanted to move back to Alberta. So being kind of in lake country back there, immediately I'm looking for a spot to find a lake. So Chestermere, being close to family and having the lake life as well was very important for us. So.
And your background, you're an engineer, is that right?
Correct, yeah. I'm a civil engineer. Graduated in Lakehead University in 2006, yep. So I've done land development all through Alberta. I've done some in Fort McMurray, down through Calgary, as well as probably from Rocky Mountain House to Three Hills. So I've encompassed the whole land of
Alberta well.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's great. Again, with Shamin, what's your role in the city?
Currently, I am the Manager of Development and Special Projects. So I've started from the bottom. Now I'm here. I started as a clerk, and I've learned the process all throughout, and now I'm a manager.
Wow. How long? You've lived here about 12 years, you said, so you're obviously from Chestermere.
Yep.
And have you lived in Chestermere the entire time you've worked here?
No, I worked here first and then moved here. So I've been a resident of Chestermere for 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And my daughter's been going to a Chestermere school since we moved here. And even prior to that, actually.
One of the things I wanted to talk about is that we get a lot of questions about if Chestermere as a city builds schools. And right now, I just want to clarify that the city itself does not build schools. But what we do is get encourage our developers, and we help with the planning to get the sites ready for the schools to be built. One of the things that we've been working on is with our developers is trying to encourage them to look into whether they would consider helping to fund schools to try and bring schools forward faster. And we've had a lot of good response with that. We've had some of our developers have come forward and have expressed interest in actually funding some schools. But there is a process. There is a process that has to go through. Travis, what has been your experience with the way, I guess, that the developers have to work with, and who do they have to work with to make this happen?
Yep. That's a great question. So there are, a few different parties involved in bringing a school to a community. The city of Chestermere plays a role for sure in trying to advance those school sites, making sure those sites are ready. The developer is also a party because they own the land, right? It's all schools are within their communities, their planned communities, as well as with the school board themselves, whether it's Rocky View School Board or the Catholic School Board, as well as the government, because the government are the body that provides the funding to these schools currently. So.
And so, who makes the decisions on whether a school actually proceeds? How does that work?
So the process there is that the school board will develop their capital plan. Most times you'll see a 3 to 4 year capital plan that's released by each school board.
Yeah.
That gets submitted to the government, and then the government will review that and may approve certain projects within that capital plan of what's going to receive funding. There are different processes in regards to the funding as well. You may receive funding for preliminary planning. You may receive it for the planning and design and or construction as well. So there's different funding releases to the school board.
So Rocky View Schools is one of those school boards, as well as the Calgary Catholic School Board.
Correct. Yeah.
And so they make the decision as to where the timing would be or whatnot?
So the capital plan has a priority list that's within it of what schools they want to bring forth in certain years. And so they'll do, 2023 will have a certain amount of schools, 2024 will have a certain amount of schools, and 2025. And that priority list is based on the demand of the student populations within the district. So say, for instance, if the schools right now from K to 9 are overwhelmed, then obviously they will want to advance a K to 9 school within the city of Chestermere. For instance, like a high school site, they will again look at the student population, the growth population as well, and determine where in their priority list this high school is going to fall.
Okay, thank you. Shamin, if you could explain a little bit about what is the process that we go through for the city and the process that the developers would go through?
Oh, absolutely. I brought in a presentation to council, I think 2 weeks ago, and most of it were also covered by Travis, as he was explaining earlier. So first off, it would start with a pre-planning and planning process. The city plays a very important role in that process because that's where we identify the location of schools. We'd like to get the school board on board as early as that stage because they would determine based on the development on a larger context how many schools are needed. That's going to be through the ASP process, which is the area structure plan. That triggers an outline plan, which is a more detailed concept of the school. So we're going to see access, the area of the school, etc. So now it would be a collaboration between the city, amongst the city, the developers, and the school boards. So after that, then it triggers the subdivision. Huge milestone under the subdivision stage would be title transfer. During this stage, we also would like to get the site prepared so that basically triggers the school board to add that to their capital plan, which Travis was talking about earlier. Now, once they have their capital plan, it's submitted to the Alberta government. So now we're seeing 4 stakeholders: the school boards, the city, the municipality, and the government. The government will then decide which schools to fund within whatever priority list they have. And then after which that triggers design, construction, and occupancy. So now that's where we get in the builders. So that's the whole process in a nutshell.
Yes.
So I hope I kept that in summary, and that's how everybody's involved.
So what changes are we making? Because as we know, a lot of parents are unsatisfied with the speed at which schools are getting approved. And as we've indicated, Chestermere doesn't make that approval, but what Chestermere does do is try and encourage and our developers to move these school sites forward faster. What are we doing differently in our process today in relation to how do we speed things up?
So I'll answer that question. I think it's important to know, as Shamin mentioned, about the different stakeholders involved, the different parties involved in the whole approval process. And so going back to your original comment that Chestermere doesn't build schools, and we also don't fund the schools. Mm-hmm. So we play an important part, though, in regards to advancing those school sites. So to answer that question of what are we doing to help move the school sites forward, is we're working with the developers to be able to bring those school sites into earlier phases. And it may not be phase 1, but it could be phase 2. And it could be a hybrid where phase 2 could be preliminary service from phase 1, and the school site is subdivided by itself and transferred to the school in their name. And so by being able to work with the developers, that's one area that we thought that we could help fast track for the school board for their site readiness checklist that they submit to the government. and that's one of being the ownership of the site. So.
Now, is that for our new communities, such as Clearwater, for example, that you're requiring them to have this, and how do you do that? Is that in a development agreement? Is that, like as you mentioned, that's in there, trying to encourage it to be in the first phase?
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to the root of developers wanting, they want attraction to their community as
Very
well.
true.
So being able to advance something of that nature would only in turn create demand for their community. So they would want to bring that forward as well. And to the other point here is that developers are also interested in finding alternate funding opportunities, as we all are, right? We know that the government releases a certain amount of budget for their school program each year to different school boards. But if there was an opportunity for a developer to maybe even fund the preliminary planning just to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
They could fund maybe the design component and just have the design sit and shelf ready for when it meets the demand and the priority list within the capital plan of the school board. So there's different ways where the city is trying to get involved, trying to advocate, trying to help these sites move forward.
Now, speaking specifically, when we look at the Clearwater site, so that site, can you explain, I guess, what has the city done with that developer, and what is the developer's response, I guess, into how quickly are they bringing their school sites forward?
Yeah, it goes back to being able to have a school site in the early phases, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the exact phase, Shamin, I'm not sure if you know the exact phase of when Clearwater Park has their school.
One school in Clearwater Park is under an approved outline plan at the moment.
In phase one?
Yes.
And so, again, developer would want or be interested in advancing that school site.
Mm-hmm.
And if preliminary feedback is that, there's even opportunity for them to help find alternate funding solutions for it as well. So,
If
Yeah,
I may
go
add,
ahead, yes.
just because we're talking about timelines here, which I would just like to make it a point that by advancing this in the earlier stages, the timeline on that is like very unpredictable at the moment. But as we advance it and create this initiative, hopefully we can at least have an idea of how quickly we can get these sites ready. Because we know that from the approval of funding for design up to the occupancy, it takes about 3 to 4 years. So that is established. Now, if we can do something to advance it to be ready for that stage, then at least, we know that we're going to see a school within 5 to 6 years, including from pre-planning to occupancy.
Now, I understand that, like in Clearwater's example again, so they're looking forward to moving the subdivision of that first school site in their phase one. And the reason they want to do the subdivision is so that they get it into the school board's name.
yeah, so, and this is just general feedback from all developers right now. I'm reaching out to them for the ones that I have received feedback is they are interested in advancing it. The specifics of how it's serviced and that could come later,
Yeah.
but the opportunity of identifying that once the site is transferred in title
Yeah.
to the school board, it just allows the site to be that much more ready, right? Because it's in their name, we're committed, developers committed, RBS or the Catholic School Board or whoever the school board is committed to advancing that site forward to Alberta government.
I was just going to ask you as well on that, is the other developers in the other existing communities, the existing arrangements that the city has with them, whether it's in their development agreement, has not had a lot of these school sites in the first phases. So how are you able to talk to them, and how are you able to encourage them to get these school sites to be a priority and make sure we can try and figure out ways to get them subdivided, I guess, and into the school board's names?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think right now, when you look at the Dawson community and the Chelsea community, like those are 3/4 built out or even half built out,
Very
right?
much.
And so now we're looking at school sites. This goes back to the root of your question: is how do we bring that forward, right? What more can the city do to bring that forward? And right now we have an opportunity to do that with, say, Bridgeport, any future communities in the south of city of Chestermere, as well as Clearwater Park. So now we have the opportunity to advance those sites when you're looking at, say, like Dawson and Chelsea with them already being built out, and to what Shamin had said, you're still 3 years, like from the time 3 to 4 years by the time you start your preliminary design to when the doors open, right, for the school year. So
Now, specifically, there's been a lot of attention that's been placed on our high school in Chelsea. Can you speak a little bit about where we're at with that high school, and then some of the new information that that just came out today?
yeah, for sure. So the Chelsea High School site, as we had mentioned in our council presentation a couple weeks ago, has gained a lot of attention, and so what the city has been trying to do is trying to find out from the school board and from the developer what it takes to bring that site forward. But at the same time, the city can only bring it so far. Like I said, we don't build schools, we don't fund the schools. All we can do is do our part in making sure that the site is ready. That being the transfer of the title, the site being fully serviced, and obviously the site being fully graded. So with that, we're able to look at that as a whole and be able to help provide information to the school board and saying, here are the items to help meet your site readiness checklist, right? And so that checklist is what's submitted to the government, that one of them being the transfer of title, the site ownership, right? So with the high school site right now, they have it on their 2025 budget year.
Oh, excellent.
Within that capital plan, so RVS has released their 2024 to 2027 capital plan, which is available to the public. And so you can go into that document and you can see the status of the site. I think it's number 11 on their priority list, and that's through 2023, 2024, and 2025. So there's 11 schools right now between those 3 years. And so the Chestermere High School site is identified as being ready in 2023. That's the site readiness criteria. So that's when RVS is able to take that information to the government and say, we're ready for this, here's where it is on our priority list. But the priority list is established based on current demand and student population. So what I did learn is that Langdon is opening a brand new school here next year.
2024.
2024,
yeah.
they'll have the doors open, as it's planned right now. And so what that's going to do is going to draw some of the population out of the current high school site that's here into Langdon, which will allow future growth. So I think that has come into play in regards to establishing a priority list, because right now the higher demands are the K to 9 schools. And when you look around Chestermere, and we have available school sites here now that we can bring on a K to 9 site. You look at Dawson, I could easily get another one available in Chelsea. So we have a bit of a backup plan there if we need to be able to bring that K to 9 school here. And so even when you look at the existing schools right now, they're overpopulated. There's a lot of kids in the K to 9.
There is.
In the K to 9 grades. And so that is what helps them establish their priority list.
So you've heard today, from what I understand, that from RVS, that now our high school has finally been included in a budget year, and it being 2025, which is good news. You also mentioned that Chestermere in Dawson, I believe, has a backup site as well to the current site that RVS just announced that the K to 9 school can go on. So does that mean that the backup site that RVS will be looking at possibly another school, or how do you expect that to work?
So the probably the biggest thing that identifies when we spoke with RVS is that when they are at the ASP stage or outline plan stage, we're identifying that there's at least one K to 9 school site for every quarter section.
Every quarter section.
That's
Okay.
about average, right?
Yep.
And when you look at the high school sites, they could range anywhere from 8 to 10 quarter sections, right?
Yes.
So they're bigger schools, they house about 1,500 kids, right? But the K to 9 site right now, that we received preliminary, not us, but RVS has received preliminary planning funding, and you can see that in the public documents as well, that the Chestermere K to 9 site that's listed in there is number 4 on the list, and for 2023 preliminary planning, which is great, because then that just advances the progress of the school, and then I get into a design stage and construction stage.
And so you were saying that, just before we finish, you were saying that the developers are possibly interested in how they can provide some of this preliminary funding to get the initial designs, preliminary designs going, and try and encourage the process to occur quicker.
Yep, so those conversations are very preliminary right now,
Yeah.
like just finding these different models of, you know, at the same time as how much we can have the developers invest into their community as well and trying to help advance those school sites. The faster that we can move forward with some of the preliminary planning, it just makes that site that much more ready. That's not to say though that it's going to be built the next day or even in the next year. Again, it goes
Right.
back to the school board's priority list. They're the ones that set the priority list.
Shamin, one of the questions I wanted to ask as well is, what's the status of our school sites currently? And which ones are coming out, really first?
Absolutely. Very exciting. I know that the joint school site, it's a Catholic school that's in Chelsea and Dawson. So both those subdivisions have been registered, titles have been transferred,
Oh, wow.
so that's huge. And design funding has been approved just recently. So what does that mean? Once you get design funding, then you'll get your contractors to create the design of the school, so more concepts. Again, funding is still being discussed at the moment. They don't know yet whether they're going to be building the school or if it's going to be P3, but they did say that they should know more about the fall, within the fall season. So that's coming up soon. That's fall of 2024.
And that's for the Catholic school,
That's correct.
in
Yeah.
which is a joint site between Chelsea and Dawson.
Correct.
Is that right?
And that's a K-9 Catholic school.
Excellent. And the other school that's the RVS school, Rockview Schools, is another K-9 site that was just announced. What stage are they at with that process?
So that would be, they recently received preliminary
Preliminary
budget,
design? Funding?
budget,
Budget? Okay.
budget for preliminary planning. And what that means is that they can now proceed with the subdivision phase more concretely. With that, though, I do understand that Rocky View does have a choice where to put that site. Currently, they do have a K-9 in Dawson, but they also have a K-9 planned in Chelsea. So whichever site comes first as being ready to build a school, then that's where we're gonna move forward.
So there's actually two sites in Dawson and one in Chelsea, is that right?
So there's a K-9 school in Dawson under Rocky View,
Yep.
and there's a K-9 school in Chelsea under Rocky View.
So
Now,
two Rockview sites. That's excellent. And they're very close to both being able to be used forward in developing the school.
I understand that Chelsea, if we'd like to proceed with subdivision, can subdivide or apply for a subdivision pretty much soon here.
That's correct. So the school site in Chelsea is right adjacent to one of their phases that they're servicing right now.
Okay.
To bring on that site would be fairly easy to do.
Has there been any conversation with Rockview Schools as to, does it make sense to bring two schools on at the same time, or?
Again, it goes back to their demand,
Total demand,
student
yeah.
population, and their priority list. Yep, as well as the approved funding. So, with the approved funding that they have right now, the K-9 preliminary planning funding that Shamin has mentioned, that will allow them to receive the funding to assign it to a site that's the most readiness.
So they're looking at putting one school currently.
Yes.
Well, that's great that we've got a second site available, which obviously parents are excited to hear. And if Rockview Schools and the province can determine that they want two schools, well, then we'll be darn close to get able to do that for them.
Yep.
Well, that's excellent. All right, thank you very much. Well, it's just encouraging to see that that you guys are putting these priorities and emphasis on school sites and trying to come up with different ways that we can fast track the process as much as we can. Obviously, as you've mentioned, the final decision is up between RVS and the province, but it is important for us to try and see what we can do to improve that process. And you guys have identified that, there's lots of new ways that you're doing that. So it's nice to hear, and I'm sure the Chestermere residents are really happy about getting some opportunity to hear from some of our staff that are very integral in this process.